The city of Troy loves their history.
Cheers, happy holidays!
'Twas the night before Christmas.
They really love it.
Went all through the house.
Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
And during the holiday season, how can you not when you've got a little help from the big guy?
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care.
In hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there.
So this site right here is where the famous poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" was probably first read for the first time ever in Troy, New York.
You're telling me that the parking lot of a Dunkin' Donuts is where "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" was first read?
Yep. Now, actually, it wasn't always a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. It was originally St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
If you didn't know, you aren't alone.
This is arguably the birthplace of Santa Claus.
How does one of the world's most beloved characters get his start in a small city on the Hudson River?
Okay, and we're here.
The current St. Paul's Church holds that answer.
Harriet Butler was the eldest daughter of the Reverend Butler here. She had been down in New York City visiting a family friend, Clement Clark Moore.
While she was there, Moore read the poem to his family one evening
He was chubby and plump.
A right jolly old elf.
and allowed Butler to bring a copy back home to Troy. It didn't take long for her to share the story. She read it out loud during her Sunday school class to her friends.
And another member, Mrs. Sarah Sackett, loved the poem so much that she took it over to the Troy Sentinel newspaper.
That's where we're heading next.
Yes. Well, look at that guy there.
I know,
He's
that's
nice.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So this is it.
This is the Troy Sentinel building where Sarah Sackett delivered the poem to Orville Holley, the editor,
He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work.
who published the poem on December 23rd, 1823. So Clement Clark Moore is credited here on this plaque as the author. But originally the poem was published anonymously, and as it grew in popularity, everyone wanted to know who wrote this wonderful poem.
The answer is right down the street.
Now dash away, dash away, dash away all.
Behind us is the former home of the Troy Budget newspaper, which credited Clement Clark Moore as the author for the first time in a newspaper.
Coincidentally, this site has something else to do with Santa.
Above the Budget newspaper was Myron King's studio. King was a local engraver, and in around 1830, he created this wonderful engraving of
Saint Nick
based on the poem, flying through the air in his.
Miniature sleigh.
and 8 tiny reindeer.
And that really was, the first illustration of Santa as we know him. A lot of people have heard that Troy is the hometown of Uncle Sam, but I believe we also have the claim to being the hometown of
St. Nicholas, too.
Santa would later move down the river a few miles into Albany, where he was first commercialized in the 1840s.
Have you been good this year? Yes!
But it's here in Troy where we find his roots.
But I heard him exclaim,
Ere he drove out of sight.
With the Albany Archives,
And that's the origin of the American Santa Claus.
I'm Matt Millett for Spectrum News.
Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
I'm the oldest architect in Albany. We've been very busy over the past 60 years. Oh, I'm crazy about it. I'm working now. I'm almost 90, so all over Albany and New York. I even did a drive-in theater in Johannesburg, South Africa. So, where you go where the work is. Nobody knew about me. I was a quiet architect. We had an office, about 10 people, but no one got any publicity. You put up a 25-foot high dog, and I'm getting people from California calling me. Well, I never expected this kind of notoriety. Nipper is very much of a trademark for RCA. He's made out of some fiberglass and is reinforced with steel. They were going to put it right next to the entrance door. That little 4-foot dog they had would be lost on Broadway. They wouldn't even see it. So I said, if you want it visible, you got to put it higher than the roof. So I figured 25 feet with a 12-foot base will be very visible, and it is. It was quite a job to bring it here. This dog was so big, you had to put it on a railroad car. They had to use a crane down there, lift it up on the roof. It's gotten around. Some people tell me they know when they get to Albany when they can see the dog. It's like the Eiffel Tower, but a little less expensive.
Blink, and you'll miss them.
All right, according to the map, monument number 13 is just here to the south end of the village of Schuylerville. Yep, there it is.
Littered along the Capital Region roadways are small monuments to our Revolutionary War expedition.
In 1775, the British held Boston. George Washington and the very new Continental Army had the city surrounded, but they needed to dislodge the British before they really launched a counterattack.
This is where General Washington took a bold risk.
He recruits this young bookseller, Henry Knox, 25 years old. Washington sends Knox on a mission. Sends him to Fort Ticonderoga to bring the cannons that are up at Fort Ty back to Boston to surround the city to force the British to evacuate.
In 1926 and 27, these monuments would mark the noble train of artillery that Knox and his men took from Essex County down through Albany all the way to Boston. And there's more than just a handful of them.
New York State and the state of Massachusetts erected a total of 30 monuments here in New York, an additional 26 in Massachusetts.
That's a total of 56. We're going to find a few. Feet of ice and snow slowed Knox's journey. What he estimated to take just over 2 weeks to complete was now only getting him to southern Saratoga County. But despite the weather,
it's amazing what Knox accomplished in a short amount of time. In the little space of maybe about a month and a half, maybe a little less than that, he hauled tons of cannon and mortar.
And here is another one, right here.
Right here. Standing right here on the banks of the Hudson, and you'd think this is where Knox would have crossed the Hudson River, but he didn't. They went a little bit further to the west, finally made it across the Mohawk, and then went down towards Albany.
There's another one.
Yeah, that's number 15.
And here is one in a spot that I come to all the time, and I have never seen this.
Probably 10,000 people a day come past this monument and don't know that it's here. It shows you that history is all over the place. You just have to know where to look.
We have another one.
Marker number 23. This is the east side of the Hudson. Knox traversed the Hudson here from Albany, the south part of Albany, rather than up in Waterford, where we initially had thought he might have. But on the trip over from Albany to the eastern shore, they lost one of the cannons. Knox writes in his journal, they retrieved the cannon thanks to the help of the good citizens of Albany.
Henry Knox arrived in Boston at the end of January 1776, and the Continental Army was successful in withdrawing the British forces from Boston. That young bookseller would go on to become the nation's first Secretary of War. With the Albany Archives, I'm Matt Millett for Spectrum News. Halloween is that special time of year when ghouls and ghosts make their way back to the forefront of our minds. In theaters all over the world, superstition of the paranormal comes with the trade.
The ghost light is universal. The ghost light is on every stage. It doesn't matter whether it's in Proctor's or in London.
And that ghost light is always on when a production is not.
The ghost light protects the stage and protects the production from anything that's going to interfere.
While the ghost light may be on every stage, there are some ghostly stories that are unique to Proctor's. Not all specters haunt houses or rattle chains. Some enjoy a night at the theater. Since it first opened its doors in 1926, a lady in white occasionally pays a visit here.
The lady in white in Schenectady has been seen in Vale Cemetery, Jackson Gardens at Union College. She's been seen down on the Stockade, and she appears here. She sits in the box seat right over there. She's seen in the theaters quietly waiting for a play, I guess.
If you're going to see a play in Schenectady, you might as well come to Proctor's.
Well, where else?
The lady in white isn't the only woman to linger here. They say another one likes to hang around a flight of stairs.
The other lady has been seen by a couple of staff members. The first one to tell me about the story said he was working and he looked up and there was a woman standing there. And he said her clothing were not of the era. He just knew that she didn't want him where he was. And so he left.
No one really knows who she is or why she's there, but stairs seem to be her thing. Some speculate it could be the first wife of the theater's first owner, F.F. Proctor. But ghosts don't only come in human form.
We have a few animals who showed up. One of them happens to be a lion.
You have a ghost lion.
We have a ghost lion, yes we do. Would you like to hear about it?
Okay, go on.
There was a show brought in by a magician and the magician had a lion. The lion did not like to be caged in the small cage that they had to carry him in, and he was here overnight. And so they finally decided to just let him have the run of the theater.
Some years later, that lion would leave this mortal coil, and it was Proctor's he returned to.
Because he loved theater so much, he had such a good time here.
Are there any truths to these stories? Maybe, but we'll probably never know. They're fun, and it brings another welcome layer of history to Proctor's Theater. With the Albany Archives, I'm Matt Millett for Spectrum News.
I'm too busy. I don't get out much. This is the only day of the year I come to the track. Well, you have to be all here all day to hold the seat. Plus the entertainment value. I'm a color person. If it's a shade off, don't wear it. It's a painter eye, I'm telling you, that's it. And every year is a new batch of paint. I'm here to paint the colors, the winning colors on the Travers Lawn Jockey after the race. As soon as it's done, the case gets up there and I start throwing paint. I've only got an hour and a half. I run out of daylight. There's no lights on this guy. I came over here to the track and I said, who paints those jockeys out in the circle? And they had just fired the girl because she wanted a whole lot of money. And I said, hi, I'm Robin Schumacher. I'm your new girl. I had to build a shop because I was doing them in my kitchen. And when I get the track ones in there, it looks like a jockey explosion. Little men all over the place.
How you doing, my dear?
I had a little girl come up to me today and show me her drawings because she's watched me for a few years. I was told to throw out the paints and the brushes. I'd never make a living at it. And I have a little problem with that. It's called I'll show you. And I've made a living out of it. And I gave her the same advice. This is something that makes you happy and you think that this is going to make you happy throughout your life, then do it.
In the middle of Albany sits the city's crown jewel, Washington Park, with its breathtaking views, historic monuments, and wide-open green space. But the area didn't always have this appearance.
Some of it was privately owned. There was a brewery further down. But what was mainly here, from right along where we're walking, was the State Street burial grounds.
Yep, Washington Park was once a cemetery, and not a little one either. If you broke it down, the burial grounds sat on roughly half of the park's footprint from the Knox Street Mall to Englewood Place.
It was divided in long strips, and the strips divided you as Methodist or Catholic or strangers.
Among other things. So what happened to it?
It filled up because when this was planned in 1800, this was a much smaller city, and the city kept doubling its size, and people were concerned. They were filled with the deceased.
The dead weren't the only problem.
These enormous 4 blocks were totally neglected. There were problems with young hooligans, if you want, having gang wars. Seriously, it was a major problem.
By the mid-1800s, the times, they were changing. Albany Rural Cemetery had opened, and people were traveling to Menands to walk the grounds because it had a beautiful park feel to it. It was time that Albany made their own.
And the whole idea of a central park, one that would bring in the neighborhoods, would bring in the wealthy people as well as those who were impoverished, that was just a wonderful idea.
The new site was selected, and one thing was left: moving over 40,000 bodies out of the new Washington Park.
Anybody who had a family plot would be told that their remains would be brought together, that wooden box would be created. It would be a community burial with the skeletons.
Most of the remains were moved to Albany Rural Cemetery, where they still live today. But could they have left a few bodies and only moved the headstones?
I think it would be probable.
So remember, the next time you're looking to unwind on the grass in the warm spring sun, you may not be the only one nearby having a relaxing day's rest. For the Albany Archives, I'm Matt Millett with Spectrum News.